A lot to do, as I said. We are joined every Wednesday on this show by Kurt Helin of Pro Basketball Talk at NBCSports.com. He does a terrific job on the NBA for the Peacock, and we will get some thoughts with him on all things NBA. We spend a couple of segments with him every week on the show. There is tons of NFL news. As we speak, there are a lot of moves being made. The Chiefs in the midst of doing a deal with the Rams, with Trent McDuffie involved. That is one of the big headlines of the day. A whole bunch of activity yesterday. Guys being franchise tagged, deals being reworked to try and get teams more cap space. That is going on. We'll get into that. Sammy Arnell obviously will be with us as well to talk about that. The interesting story from the WNBA. We're 6 days away from a deadline imposed by the league for a deal to get done. Otherwise, you could be looking at games lost for the first time in WNBA history. We'll talk about that coming up a little later on in the show. Odds and ends and a whole bunch more, but we get things started as we do every day on the show. It's time for the big story. And the big story today for me has to be what you see on the screen. Listen, call me nostalgic, call me old boomer. I make a lot of jokes on here that sometimes people say, "Oh, boomer." But I get the feels. I love what NBC has done with the NBA on NBC returning this year and mixing nostalgia and giving us sort of that old feel of what we remember watching, 30 years ago in the 90s and early 2000s until the NBA said goodbye to NBC. It was terrific watching Bob Costas, Doug Collins, Mike Fratello, PJ Carlesimo, Isaiah Thomas. Hannah Storm was terrific. I mean, none of these guys missed a beat. And you know me well enough to be honest with you guys. If I thought it was bad or a bad attempt at trying to, turn back the clock, that sort of thing. If I thought it was bad, I would tell you. You know me well enough to come on here and say, I have no problem crushing anybody whenever I feel like. I'm beholden to nobody, right? We're an independent show. I work for nobody except myself. I thought this was great last night. Now, unfortunately, the game didn't cooperate as the Spurs ran roughshod all over the poor 76ers, who were without Joel Embiid and without Paul George, who's suspended because of a drug violation. I mean, it was tough to watch. But I had fun watching, Doug Collins and Jim Gray. Don't forget Jim Gray, who was there on the broadcast as well, who did a terrific job. This was great. I enjoyed every second of it. But as much as I enjoyed it, hearing Bob Costas and Doug Collins, Doug Collins didn't miss a beat. He hasn't been on doing any games in forever, and he still sounded like he knew what was going on and was up to date. Mike Fratello still calls games, I believe, for the Clippers, so he's still kind of plugged in and understands what's going on around the league. But watching this last night was both heartwarming for me and a throwback, and I loved it. But at the same time, it reminds you of just how different the league is. And look, it should be. It's 30 years, later. Or at the very least 25 years later than when we last watched these guys call games for NBA, for the NBA on NBC. But it does call to mind the fact that we are talking about such a different game with 7-footers out behind the three-point line. When the NBA on NBC departed in 2002, you didn't have 7-footers out there chucking up threes the way you see them now. You didn't have, 53 pointers in a game being shot up by teams. It was a different game. And I'm not saying for the better or for the worse. Some people think it's for the worse. If you're a fan today, maybe you like it because it's all you know. But to me, that was the thing that kind of, once I got past the, wow, it's Bob Costas and Doug Collins and Mike Fratello calling a game. Once you get past that and you listen to them calling the game and how many times they have to say, well, that wasn't going on 30 years ago, or that wasn't going on 25 years ago. Or That sort of foul wouldn't have been called 25 years ago when the Knicks were beating the crap out of the Miami Heat, or the Knicks were beating the crap out of the Bulls, and these two teams were punching each other, and the Pacers at Madison Square Garden, and all these different things that were going on back then. It's a different sport. There's no getting around it. The game is different. The game has changed. The game has evolved. But it's the same, you could say, for every sport now. In the NFL, 30 years ago, you could take a quarterback's head off, and it was okay. In Major League Baseball, if Don Mattingly struck out 50 times in a year, that was a lot. Tony Gwynn and guys like that who didn't strike out a lot. Sports change. Sports evolve. For better or worse, so I guess in some cases you could say devolve, but for better or worse, sports change. The games we love don't always stay the same. Golf, the equipment has changed. Tennis, the equipment has changed. 30 years ago in tennis, Americans were much more dominant than they are now in tennis. Everything evolves. Everything goes through cycles. And we are in a current cycle as it relates to the NBA. This is the NBA today, with guys 7'4" chucking up 3-pointers. It's not better. It's not worse. It just is. And that was the thing that came to mind for me most watching the broadcast last night. One interesting point. Something that came up last night during the game, and I don't know if this is going to lead to where I think it's leading, but Bob Costas during the broadcast was talking about all the different people that worked on the games back then. And when he got to Marv Albert, he said something very interesting, and it was this. He said, Marv Albert, who we may hear from later in the season. And it makes me wonder if there are plans for 87-year-old Marv Albert to come out of retirement for one night to call another game for the NBA on NBC. I don't care what it sounds like with Marv at 87. Give me that for one night. I would be thrilled. I grew up idolizing Marv Albert. I grew up loving everything Marv Albert did. And I don't care what he sounds like at 87. Give me Marv Albert for one night. I'll sign up for it. We're talking NFL. Sam Yarnell joins me next. Welcome back to the show on this Wednesday. Kurt Helin joins us 10 minutes from now to talk some hoops. I was getting the feels last night watching the NBA on NBC. Bob Costas, Mike Fratello. Doug Collins sounds like he could still do games tomorrow, and he hasn't done any in like a decade. Oh, it was great. Sam Yarnell, let's talk some NFL. A bevy of moves taking place on Tuesday. Let's run through some of them. Daniel Jones, the transition tag. Who knew? Everybody forgot about the transition tag. So he gets that, which means he can still negotiate with other teams, but the Colts will have an opportunity to match. I don't know how it makes it all that different from the non-exclusive franchise tag. I guess it's a little less money they would have to pay him under this, I think, by about $6 million. Kenneth Walker not getting the franchise tag, which is very interesting. A little bit of Russian roulette there, if you will, being played by the Seahawks. That one happens. Kyler Murray not going to be brought back. He'll be cut loose by the start of the new season, the new NFL calendar year, March 11th. So he'll become a free agent, even though they're going to still owe him a ton of money. And Breece Hall gets the non-exclusive franchise tag as well, meaning he can negotiate with other teams. But again, is somebody going to want to pay all that money, then give up 2 first-round picks? We'll have to wait and see. Of all the moves we just talked about there, and any more that you want to throw into it, which one surprised you the most, Sam?
Jason, you mentioned the transition tag, and it led me down a little bit of a rabbit hole. I didn't realize the difference between the franchise and transition tag. I know, how disgraceful of me. Until just now, it's actually very interesting that it's essentially unrestricted versus restricted free agency, as we would consider it in other sports. And, you think about the situation that the Colts are in with Daniel Jones, and you scratch your head as to why they'd use a transition tag as opposed to like the Commanders, or then they were the Redskins, using the franchise tag on Kirk Cousins back in the day. And what makes the situation different? Well, in Daniel Jones' case, no one's going to take that bargain on Daniel Jones or take that risk on Daniel Jones, take that gamble on Daniel Jones, risk a guy coming off of dual leg injuries, right? Paying him $30 million a year and locking him down for years to come. So it's interesting and a very smart move from the Indianapolis Colts to use the transition tag in Daniel Jones' case. The Jets tagging Breece Hall is such a head scratcher to me. And as much good as I think the Aaron Glenn led Jets have kind of done to try and combat the obviously horrible ownership situation that they're dealing with and terrible, potentially worse than the NFL management situation they've got above them, the Breece Hall situation continues to get more confusing by the day. You got through this entire trade deadline where it seemed like a foregone conclusion he was going to end up a Kansas City Chief, and they decided to trade everybody, including their marquee cornerback who they had just paid, except they didn't trade Breece Hall. And now we get to the offseason and you're like, well, there's no chance. I mean, this is just, you take your losses, you lick your wounds, and you try to do better next season if you're the New York Jets. And then they go out and they guarantee him millions of dollars. It's just such a head-scratching move to me if you're a New York Jets team that needs to rebuild, needs to get new, younger faces in. They have just completely dropped the ball with regard to the entire Breece Hall situation, Jason.
Now, the question becomes to me, when I look at all these different guys that have gotten tagged and could still potentially move, is there a team out there that's going to throw the bag at Daniel Jones and put the Colts in a difficult position of having to match? That's what I'm curious to see if that happens. Is there a team out there that's a Daniel Jones away from winning a Super Bowl? Somebody that says, look what Sam Darnold just did, and says, we can do that with Daniel Jones if only we decide to throw the bag at him. That's what I want to see. Is that team out there?
I would have thought that was more plausible in a pre-Daniel Jones injury world, right? If Daniel Jones weren't coming off of these just, like, quite frankly, he played weeks with a broken leg in the National Football League this year. It's hard for a team to take a dozens of millions of dollars a year gamble
to win now
on
league,
a guy
though,
coming off of that. Because even if you did think you were a Daniel Jones away, that was the old version of Daniel Jones. You don't know what you're getting post leg injury.
It is a lot. It is a lot to invest, but I'm just wondering who that team could be as I sit here and scan through sort of my brain. Boy, if it were next year, you know who it would be? If it were a year from now, you know who the team would be? Who am I thinking of? Read my brain. If it's a year from now.
The Rams?
No. Houston.
Interesting.
If you were Houston, you gave up on him, Daniel Jones would be the guy. Daniel Jones would be that guy.
I don't think so. See, here's the thing, right? Because yeah, a year from now, I'm comfortable saying this. A year from now, the quarterback class is so good that I'd rather take a shot on a rookie. I'd rather take a shot on another rookie on a cheap deal than having to pay Daniel Jones, $25+ million a year.
Just take a shot on him for a year, though. How about Minnesota?
No. But again,
I know it's what Daniel Jones
offer me
getting.
Kyler Murray on a cheaper deal. I'll take that. 6 ways to Sunday.
It's interesting.
Because Kyler Murray's going to, if that were something you were considering, the other argument in that would be, well, we could have Kyler Murray for 1/10 of the price. Yeah, I'll take that. And a franchise tag that I forgot to mention that is interesting, just because we don't know how this situation is going to develop over the course of the next 5 months. George Pickens gets the franchise tag from Dallas amidst this trade request and wanting out and saying that he didn't want to be franchise tagged. This is just another brewing disaster for Jerry Jones, isn't it?
Yeah, it feels like the typical Dallas Cowboys dumpster fire in the making. But they'll figure it out. Hey, $60 million of your cap right now as of next year is headed towards 3 players. A quarter of all of your salaries going on 3 players. And it might be more of it going towards 4 of them because I mean at the end of the day. So we'll see what happens there. That'll be and we've still got the Max Crosby stuff that's kind of lingering out there.
What if he becomes a Cowboy?
I still am convinced he's staying with the Raiders. Trey Hendrickson will no longer be with the Bengals. We learned that as well yesterday. So there's
what if he becomes a Cowboy?
Why don't they just all go to the Cowboys? I love it. We're coming back with Kurt Helin next. Welcome back to this Wednesday edition of the show. If it's a Wednesday, it means we're talking with Kurt Helin of Pro Basketball Talk at NBCSports.com, who joins us. Sam is here as well. I'm not going to lie, man. I had the feels last night watching. The NBA on NBC has got me hooked.
Look, I caught, you had texted me about that. I caught most of the second game out here on the West Mid. Like, I loved the score bug, and then the cutbacks. It's Hannah Storm doing it was a fun trip down memory lane. It was much, and it's, you know what? They picked the right tonight to do that because there wasn't a lot of other reasons to stay tuned to Spurs versus 76ers. Other than the broadcast. So I thought it was fun. We'll see how they handle some of that again. But I got to say, and I don't think it's just us. I think what NBC has done and what Amazon has done has really just elevated the discourse in a lot of ways. Like, I think their pregame and postgame shows have been fantastic. The production value has been great. Like, I think it's been really impressive.
I agree. I'm not kissing up here. I'm very happy with what the NBA broadcasting. I know everybody's going to say, "Oh, there's too many games. You don't know which networks they're on." Dude, use a program guide. Like, seriously. They don't care and not for nothing, the NBA doesn't care if some 65-year-old doesn't know how to figure out where the game is. They don't want that guy anyway. They want the guy, who's a lot younger.
Not talking about Charles Barkley like that.
God almighty. I'm just saying.
Look, I think the fragmentation question is legitimate, but it's also welcome to the world today.
Exactly.
Like, I genuinely don't know how you get around it with sports or a lot of other things. Everything's fragmented.
So the Spurs bounce back, a good win for them. They had a bad loss against the Knicks. This game against the Sixers actually started out very similarly to the way it did against the Knicks, where they got out to a fast start. Philly came back, and then the Spurs put the hammer down. Do we want to pass this off as, hey, Wemby and those guys were just tired against the Knicks? Or is there something to be said for if we get a Knicks-Spurs finals, which, by the way, I think would be a very entertaining final. Sign me up for that. Ratings bonanza. If we get a Knicks-Spurs final, I think the Knicks can beat them. I think if you have Mitchell Robinson in there against Wemby for 7 games, I think the Knicks can beat the Spurs in a 7-game series.
I don't think that was the best version of the Spurs, but I think what you saw in that game was some really smart tactics on how to deal with the challenges Wemby presents. Their X's and O's handling, their cross-court passing, their again, having Mitchell Robinson, having Cat out there, even though Cat didn't have a great game, really helps with their floor spacing and stuff. I thought, they hit their threes, which is a key. But I think Knicks showed that they can create some matchup problems for the Spurs. And I honestly would still take the Spurs in the series, but I think the Knicks make it much more interesting. And that's the kind of gritty team that succeeds in the playoffs. And that's really the question about, it's a question about Detroit. Well, not the gritty part, but can you succeed in the playoffs? Same with San Antonio. We haven't seen you do it. So we need that validation.
I will say this real quick on Wemby. It is the stuff that doesn't show up in the box score. When we talk about most valuable player and all this, and he's not going to win it, but his value on the court, I can't count how many times. I lost track how many times last night. Philadelphia getting into the lane, and just his presence forcing them to kick the ball out, for less opportune or lesser opportunities, if you will. I every time I watch, it's the stuff that doesn't show up in the box score with this guy, Kurt, that his dominance, it cannot be overstated, his impact on the game. And they've got, and I hope when they get to the playoffs, they play him more than 27 or 28 minutes.
Yeah, I think you're going to see those minutes go up in the games that matter into the low to mid 30s. He just changes the geometry of the court, and much in the way you described, which is it's not. Yeah, I mean, did he average 3.5 blocks a game in February? Yes, but that's not. And the altered shots isn't it. It's the guys second guessing their decision. It's driving in and going, oh crap, and just having him there forces you can't just lob it over to the dunker spot or some stuff they'd like to do. He's just too big, too long, and able to cover so much ground that he just kind of shuts everything down or makes it much more difficult. Yeah. The Knicks handled that brilliantly, but you got to hit a lot of tough shots to make it work against it's not just them, man. Their guards are big and physical. Like that's just that's a well-built team.
Castle is a beast. Go ahead, Sam.
Kurt, the hottest team in the East right now by far is the Charlotte Hornets. They absolutely railroad the Dallas Mavericks last night in a matchup that, if you asked me a month ago, I would have been very excited to watch between Cooper Flagg and Con Knippel. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. But my question for you is this: how real of a threat are the Charlotte Hornets going to be come the playoffs?
It's a good question. Look, they're probably not going to win their first round series, but it's going to be entertaining, right? They're going to get in. Like, first off, I don't think 6 seed, them avoiding the play-in completely, is out of the question. Most likely, though, they're going to come through the play-in, and then they're going to get one of the, either Detroit or New York or Boston, whoever finishes second. Suddenly you got to work in your first round series, right? Because Con Knippel's knocking down shots, LaMelo Ball. Yeah, you could attack him defensively. The guy just has a great feel for the game. He's entertaining to watch. Bridges has been good. He wasn't good last night. He's generally good. They've got they have found a way to make it all fit really well together. And by the way, he probably isn't going to end up getting a whole lot of Coach of the Year votes, but Charles Lee deserves some credit for how he's come in and got that team to buy in and play this way within a couple of years. It's starting to turn a culture there, and that's something they needed.
Kurt, I'll go back to old reliable, the 65 game limit, because that's part of the reason we're going to end up with Con Knippel getting these Rookie of the Year votes. Has there been any updates since last week on your opinion on this 65 game limit and how it hinders voters?
I now fully support it as a voter. I think it's still, again, and it wasn't just me. I believe it was Blake Griffin was on a podcast this week and was just like, man, what I said, which is just let the voters decide. We already calculated it in. You're not going to get crazy stuff, I don't think. So, and by the way, the amount of crazy stuff you see in that voting changed 10 years ago when they stopped using journalists, but guys who covered teams and paid for by teams, some of the broadcast guys, they don't get a vote anymore. And the vote became public at the urging of the Pro Basketball Writers Association that I'm a part of. Said, no, let's make the votes public. Once you did that, now, man, if you decide to vote some random guy second or third on Rookie of the Year, you get called out.
Everybody's going to see it. Yeah, everybody's going to see it. Kurt Helin, Pro Basketball Talk at NBCSports.com. One more segment with him on the NBA next. Another segment on the NBA with the one and only Kurt Helin of Pro Basketball Talk at NBCSports.com. By the way, we're now taking this segment, these two segments with Kurt every week and putting them into their own podcast, their own YouTube video as well. So if you just want Kurt, every week you could just have Kurt. What was that, Kurt?
I think my wife will tune in, but no, you should. You should tune into those things.
So anywho, you got JJ Redick out there saying, Luka Doncic showing me up on the court. That's typical. It's no big deal. Is he right? Is it no big deal? I mean, you've been to a number of games. Is this dynamic sort of a constant between them?
I don't think it's a constant. I don't know that it's a great relationship. I don't think this is, Kerr and Curry or whatever the bond you want is. But I think what you're seeing with the Lakers, remember when that happened was the part of a 3-game losing streak where they had some 3 ugly losses in a row. And I think on losing teams, you get star players and coaches kind of frustrated with each other. And Lakers and Laker fans are increasingly frustrated with Luka's lack of defense and just that game last night. I don't know how much of it you watched. Both teams, I think, between Zion and Luka, like every call was complained about. Everything. It's like it's kind of wearing on people a little. So I think it's wearing on JJ, but JJ's seat is hotter, so he's going to acquiesce here. But look, I don't think he's in trouble this season, but I think he and Rob Pelinka are on the clock. Like, you got to make it work this summer. We got to see positive steps next year, or things might be changing.
Of all the things we see in the NBA and potential changes, do you think there is a tipping point here when it comes to the league where they come out and they get more aggressive with guys arguing calls and officials having shorter leashes and being told, hey, enough, more technicals being handed out to stop this? Because the constant pounding for Karl Anthony Towns, Luka Doncic, all the usual suspects. Do you think there's a point where the league does something about it?
It's a hard line to walk because nobody wants to just start handing out technicals. And part of the problem that they had, especially over the last few years, there's just been a generational changeover. Some older refs that guys could talk to, or that kind of knew when to pull, when you've crossed the line, and guys kind of knew where the line was with those guys. Scott Foster's line's in a different place than everybody else. But with those guys, you've got to know where the line is. With the younger refs who were trained on coming up, don't talk back, don't talk to them, put up your hand, walk away, don't have these conversations, where NBA players want to be able to, they want some, hey, this is what I saw, this is what I didn't, you can handle that eventually. And I think some of the refs may eventually get there, but right now there's just not this comfort level with that.
Yeah. I wasn't coughing because of what you were saying. I had a piece of ice go down my throat. Go ahead, Sam. Whew. I might be out for the rest of I might be on the DL here.
Are you all right, Jason? Do you need a minute?
Go ahead.
Okay. All right. Okay. Kurt, one of the funniest, I got to work some Wizards talk in here. One of the funniest things I've seen in the league this year is a player not even dressed for the game getting thrown out of it. That's what we saw out of Trae Young earlier this week. He's supposed to make his season debut, his Wizards debut, I should say, Thursday in DC, I believe.
Yes.
If I told you that there was a hypothetical line at the Sam Yarnell Sportsbook set, Trae Young over under 5.5 games played the rest of the season, which way would you tend to lean?
Ooh. I would almost lean under unless when that first game's against Utah, so it's a tank-off game. If they win a couple of those, and they've won a little lately, if you start to win games, Trae's, you want to bet on the oblique or the hamstring, right? Like whatever it is, lower back, like whatever your injury of choice is coming up, and he's going to be out again. But if they can find a way to do that and not win games too much, then
really,
you've got to look. They've got a top 8 protected pick. They can't start winning. They can't afford to start winning, so they're not going to. And Trae can be part of the losing in limited minutes, or rest him, or only play him in the games. We can't play him all the time. We're only going to play him against Oklahoma City and San Antonio and Detroit, and the games you're going to lose anyway.
Sam, I know you want to get to the Terry Rozier stuff, so go ahead.
There's more. There's obviously a status hearing going on in that massive poker case off the court, Kurt. Chauncey Billups, obviously Terry Rozier also involved in it, but Chauncey Billups involved in it as well, could potentially enter a plea deal as early as Wednesday. If that happens, what would you say the chances are that we see Chauncey back at the end of the bench for the Trailblazers by the end of the season?
0. There's the PR on that would be, even if he were exonerated in some way, I think the PR on that would be rough. And frankly, I don't know that he'll have an on-the-bench job in the NBA again.
Wow.
Now, he's a good basketball mind, and could he be in a front office or as part of a front office in some role?
Advisor.
Yeah, but I would be anything that would have him forward-facing in a serious way. I don't think you're going to see again.
Wow. That's, and I hate to say it's unfortunate because it's, he put himself obviously in this position, but the NBA was better with Chauncey Billups as part of it.
I thought, by the way, it took him a while to find his feet as a coach, but that team had been improving under him. Tiago's probably keeping that job.
Tiago's done a really, I was going to say, Tiago Splitter's done a really good job there. And again, off of the Greg Popovich sort of coaching tree, keep that in mind. He was a Spurs guy. We always talk about coaching trees in sports. Kurt Helin, Pro Basketball Talk at NBCSports.com. We're out of time. Thank you. Odds and Ends wraps it up 10 minutes from now. But first, Sam Yarnell, let's talk about the WNBA. Are there cracks forming within the WNBA players as it relates to it's 6 days until this March 10th deadline that the WNBA is set, where the league could lose games from the upcoming season. We need to get a deal done. Kelsey Plum, Brianna Stewart, I believe, a couple of players that are not thrilled with the communication or lack thereof between themselves and those at the top of the Players Association, basically the attorneys in the room, who are trying to negotiate a deal. Kill all the attorneys! Trying to negotiate the deal here with team owners, WNBA team owners, and obviously the league's commissioner, Kathy Engelbert, who's obviously involved. So you've got Kelsey Plum, Brianna Stewart. I don't know how the entire collective of WNBA players feels, but Kelsey Plum's like, look, the deal's good. Let's get this thing done. 6 days out from the deadline, Sam, are we going to lose games in the WNBA? When I had Robin Lundberg on, I think it was last week, he basically said no. He thought cooler heads would prevail, but they don't seem to be prevailing yet.
I don't know, man. Yeah, starting to feel like we might lose games, especially when, Jason, wrapped up in all of this is the 2-3 nights ago we had at the Barclays Center that they sold out playing a 3-on-3 tournament with WNBA players who aren't currently reported to their teams for obvious reasons. Everyone on both sides, weirdly enough, everyone except for the players should be super antsy right now, which is very, very funny and a quite unique position in terms of sports business. But the owners and the executives who lead the players have to be getting nervous because the players just proved to you that they can do this all without you. They can sell out an arena all by themselves, essentially. So they're just letting you use their NIL, as we so often like to call it with college athletics, to use their teams and kind of organize the competition a little bit better. I would be shaking, especially when you have these high-ranking players, Kelsey Plum, coming out and saying, you guys got to figure this out. You're not hearing us. You're not listening to us. I also think that there's an element, Jason, of all of this that needs to be translated over to Major League Baseball. There need to be Major League Baseball players taking note of, and Major League Baseball Players Association executives, for that matter, taking explicit note of what is happening in the WNBA and saying, this is exactly what we cannot let happen in a few months. We all have to be on the same page. We all have to be equally represented, because when you come to a bargaining table and you're one side of that negotiating party, right, and you're not even all on the same page about what you're negotiating for, everyone out there knows, everyone out there who's done any sort of business understands the havoc that can wreak on the deal that's being done. This is turning very messy very fast.
I'm going to say something, and I've said this before, and I'm not trying to scapegoat this person. Where are you, Caitlin Clark? I know you're not technically the first vice president of the Players Association. You're Caitlin Clark. Where are you? You're 6 days away from this thing going kaboom, and Caitlin Clark is nowhere to be found. The breadwinner for the WNBA, the cash cow, moo, for the WNBA. Where is Caitlin Clark? That's what I can't wrap my head around here. I don't get it. I don't understand how the face of your league could be so absent in this moment of peril for this league. And I know she doesn't want that role. Too bad. You've got to take that role right now.
But the question is she qualified enough for that role? I know that she's great at basketball. I understand that. Does she understand the business workings of the WNBA and how that relates to the players as much as Kelsey Plum, for instance, who's been in the WNBA through CBA negotiations, right? And has seen this all unfold and what it can do for the players and what changes need to be made. My point is, while Caitlin Clark, I think, is great for the WNBA and great as a face of the league, I don't know if she has the business acumen, and I don't know if she's been in the WNBA long enough to know what the WNBA needs. That's not any sort of a slight against her talent or her accomplishments or any of that. It's simply she's had, 2 seasons in the WNBA? That's simply not long enough working anywhere, in any job, to understand the fundamental changes that need to be made organizationally.
There's something to be said for that, but still, I still want her at least in the room. Just as a presence. I get that. Just as a presence, this looming figure that is the face of your league that has helped to bring so much of this economic push for the WNBA. The TV contract, all that stuff. It just blows my mind. And to put this into perspective right now, Kalshi has a market on this because they have a market on everything. How long will the pro women's basketball season be delayed? Because they can't say WNBA. 1 day or more, 40% chance. That is the best odds. And then it goes down from there. 3 days or more, 32%, 5 days, 27%, 10, blah, blah, blah. Interestingly, when it gets to 90 days or more, it jumps back up to 34%. So there is some belief out there that if this thing happens, it could go long, which would be, apocalyptic for the WNBA, Sam. Yeah.
I want to know what happens when I bet the yes on it to only last, 7 days or whatever. And on the 7th day, they sign it. Does my yes get paid out, Kalshi? Or are you going to keep the yes on that market too, just like the Iranian guy who died?
Sam Yarnell, ladies and gentlemen.
It's my only question.
Kalshi, call us. We're coming back. We got odds and ends right around the corner. Just about time to put the wraps on this baby. But before we do, a couple of reminders. Sports Wrap with Jason Page, the podcast. Monday through Friday, audio-only version of the show, available wherever you get your podcasts. It is growing quickly, so go and subscribe today. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, iHeart, TuneIn, Odyssey, Amazon. Anywhere you get a podcast, you can listen to this show. 45 minutes, Monday through Friday. Available early every afternoon. Then we have the Sports Wrap with Jason Page YouTube channel. This is the place for all things Sports Wrap with Jason Page. The Monday through Friday TV version of the show available for you early every afternoon. 45 minutes commercial free, waiting there for you like a hug from a warm friend. Go and check it out. Sports Wrap with Jason Page YouTube channel. Also available on our YouTube channel. Clips from the show, extended conversations, sports wrap shorts. These are 1 to 3 minute long videos. News breaks. Breece Hall gets a deal with the Jets, or who knows? Maybe Max Crosby gets traded or signs with the Raiders. Boom, we're right there on sports wrap shorts on our YouTube channel. Always live there. Monday through Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you name it, we're there. Sports Wrap Shorts with Jason Page, also available on our TikTok, Sports Wrap Jason Page, and on our Instagram, Sports Wrap Jason Page. And now, without any further delay, on this Wednesday edition of the show, it's time for some odds and ends. Odds and ends, Sam Yarnell. Let's just throw a bunch of stuff at the wall here in this final segment. Miami of Ohio, 30-0. Take that, Bruce Pearl. Miami of Ohio might be the only undefeated team going into the NCAA Tournament, Sam Yarnell.
Yeah, that probably will be. I mean, call a spade a spade. I'd be very surprised if they lost during the MAC championship tournament. But
I hope not. I hope they do. It'd be a really cool story to have, a team for. I don't know if have we ever had a team from one of these mid-majors that's been undefeated going into the tournament?
Undefeated.
Like, as the only undefeated on top of it.
I
know. I'm not
we have,
hand grenade.
And I can't think of it. Oh, and I think I was just talking to somebody the other day about it, and that's going to kill me that I can't remember it.
Yeah. Maybe it'll come to you, and I'll throw it in.
But
there you go.
What I think would also be very interesting, what if the MAC is a 2-bid league? That'd be crazy. If Miami of Ohio does lose and say, I don't know, Toledo, what if UMass beats Miami of Ohio and goes on a Cinderella run through the MAC? That's the stuff dreams are made of in college basketball. As John Rothstein would say, get your nitroglycerin pills ready, Jason Page.
Team USA thumped the Giants yesterday. We get our first look at the Stars and Stripes. I know. It's
Did you
fine.
see the best game of the day? The best game of the day happened in the Dominican Republic yesterday. The Detroit Tigers and the Dominican Republic. And if you have a chance, just go back and watch the highlights. Just scroll through Team Dominican Republic's Twitter page. They posted all the videos. Every time one of these guys hit a home run, you'd think they just won the World Series for their team. It was the most amazing thing. It was so cool. The most electric atmosphere down there in the Dominican Republic. It was so joyous to watch, man. It's what we live for when we watch baseball. I can't even put it into words. You just have to go watch it.
Okay. I will. Mekhi Becton cut by the Los Angeles Chargers, saves them $9.7 million on the cap. The Dallas Cowboys reworking some deals. We were talking about all the money they're paying out to their stars. Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, Tyler Smith. They work out those deals. It gets the Cowboys under the cap. They were nearly $55 million over the cap prior to that. It clears around $66 million in space, so that puts them around $11 million under the cap right now, Sam.
Yeah, you do the math. That'll get you one more, maybe two more good players, or make a trade for some. No, seriously, like that's what it'll do, and that's how much better the Cowboys can get for this season, Cowboys fans. So that's what you have to look forward to. I'll say this, like, this is a very popular trend in the NFL right now, be it right or wrong. My beloved Buffalo Bills love to do this as well, renegotiating quarterback contracts, going into an offseason to try and kick that money down the road. This is an era of NFL contracts that I am very, very, very interested to see the repercussions of, because you have all these teams kicking this can down this road. You're starting to get a peek into it with the Miami Dolphins and what they're going to have to deal with Tua Tagovailoa and a $99 million dead cap hit this season. But Jason, this is just another one of these moves that is going to continue to make the Cowboys' life easier this year and harder in years to come.
Hey, what were you doing yesterday? I bet you weren't doing what Arena Sabalenka was doing. Let's finish the show on a high. Congratulations, Arena Sabalenka, getting engaged yesterday to Brazilian businessman Georgios Frangoulis. Hey, congratulations, Arena. And she did it in Indian Wells. I mean, I don't know if that's the place I'd propose to somebody, but for some reason, her man decided to propose to her at Indian Wells, which is called Tennis Paradise, by the way. If you've never been to the BNP Paribas, you want to go to a great world-class tennis event, go see our friends out there in Indian Wells. But congratulations to Arena Sabalenka, one of the greatest tennis players on the planet right now. She's engaged.
Is that tournament soon? The tennis
It's
calendar
going on right now. Starts right now.
It's
a 2-week tournament. It's the first week is underway now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm not going.
And that's a lead up for what?
Nothing. It's just a big.
Okay.
It's just a big tournament. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the fifth largest tennis tournament in the world.
Again, tennis. No. I'm familiar with the tournament, but right, like you have all of these, and I'm like thinking of what the next tennis major is, and it's like not until Wimbledon. Very confusing calendar that sport has.
We gotta go. Thanks to Kurt Helin. Thanks to Sam Yarnell, even if he doesn't know when the tennis calendar falls. And congratulations, Arena Sabalenka. I'm Jason Page. We'll see you tomorrow. Hi there. I'm Jason Page. You like what you're watching? Subscribe. We've got Sports Wrap Shorts on this channel. We've got the show. We've got clips from the show. What else do you have to do? You probably follow a lot of other things that aren't half as they're not half as exciting as this show is. So what are you waiting for? Click the subscribe button, follow the channel, watch the content. Bye.